Hi, it's Nicole. Welcome back to Shaketember 2024. Today we're talking about King Leir. Let me tell you a story. Lear was an ancient king of Britain. As he neared his death, he divided the kingdom among his three daughters, Goneril, Regan and Cordelia. Goneril and Regan flattered their father and, at the advice of Lear's nobles, were married off to the Dukes of Albany and Cornwall. Cordelia, despite being her father's favourite, refused to flatter him, feeling that she should not need to make special assurances of her love, and was given no land to rule. The king of the Franks courted and married Cordelia despite Lear's refusal to pay a dowry. Lear then gave Goneril and Regan half his kingdom, planning to bequeath them the remainder at his death. Instead, his sons-in-law rebelled and seized the whole of it. Duke of Albany, Goneril's husband, maintained Lear with a retinue of 60 knights, but his wife reduced this by half after 2 years. Lear then fled to Regan, who reduced his entourage to only 5 men. Returning to Albany and pleading with Goneril, Lear was left with a single knight for protection. At this point, Lear feared both his elder daughters and fled to France. He sent Cordelia a messenger when he was outside her court. She had him bathed, royally clothed, and assigned a fittingly large band of retainers. He was then officially received by the king and made regent of France, with the Frankish nobles vowing to restore him to his former glory. Lear, Cordelia, and her husband invaded Britain and overthrew his other daughters and sons-in-law. Lear is restored to the throne and reconciled with Cordelia. Some of you might be shouting, Nicole, you promised no spoilers in the part 1 videos. And some of you might be wondering, wait, what version have you been reading, Nicole? This doesn't sound quite right. This is the original story of King Leir, spelt with an I, recorded by Geoffrey of Monmouth in History of the Kings of Britain, which was written in medieval times. There were a few versions of the story of Leir, but they remained largely the same. I read it out to you because when Shakespeare's King Leir was performed in London in 1603, this was what people knew and expected. So, today we'll look at Act 1 together. In this video, I'm hoping it will be interesting and helpful whether you've read it or not. I'll say my usual disclaimer here. I'm not an academic, I'm just an enthusiastic amateur reader. Please feel free to disagree with me, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Act 1, Scene 1 starts like a fairy tale. Once upon a time, there was an old king who had 3 daughters. One day, the king asked daughters to come in front of him because he decided to divide the whole of the kingdom between them. Notice the change Shakespeare makes, and hoped to live out his life to a ripe old age in their homes in turn. The king asked them, "Which of you loves me most?" Let's look at the opening lines. The opening lines in Shakespeare's plays are always worth paying attention to. I thought the king had more affected the Duke of Albany than Cornwall. It did always seem so to us, but now, in the division of the kingdom, it appears not which of the dukes he values most, for qualities are so weighed that curiosity in neither can make choice of either's moiety. Basically, it's not clear which duke is more worthy, the king can't decide. "Is not this your son, my lord?" A sudden change of subject. "His breeding, sir, hath been at my charge. I have so often blushed to acknowledge him, that now am braced to it." Gloucester speaks in riddles. "I cannot conceive you," Kent says he doesn't understand. "Sir, this young fellow's mother could conceive," with a double meaning there. Whereupon she grew round-wombed, and had indeed, sir, a son for her cradle, ere she had a husband for her bed. Do you smell a fault? This son's mother was not Gloucester's wife. Edmund was born out of wedlock. There's a distinct lack of mothers in this story. We don't know where Lear's wife is, and we're not told where Gloucester's wife or this mistress is either. I cannot wish the fault undone, the issue of it being so proper. Kent has been kind about Edmund's being illegitimate and praising him for his good looks. Proper means tall and handsome with bulk. But I have a son, sir, by order of law, some year elder than this, who yet is no dearer in my account. Gloucester has another son, who is not only older, but also legitimate. Does Gloucester favour the other son, which we soon find out is called Edgar? When he says Edgar is no dearer in my account, is he speaking in riddles and meaning the opposite, or is he speaking the truth? Edmund himself says later, our father's love is to the bastard Edmund as to the legitimate. Either way, the key is that there is potential favoritism from the parent at play, which goes nicely back to the first line where the king, as a parent, shows favoritism too. So we are told few things. There's favoritism shown by parents among their children. There's the division of the kingdom, and there's lust. Let's zoom in even further at the very first line. It's Kent speaking. He says, I thought the king had more affected the Duke of Albany than Cornwall. Kent says, I thought the king favoured the Duke of Albany more than Cornwall. We don't yet know who Albany or Cornwall is, but we are certain that Shakespeare will tell us. And that's all what we hear. But that was not what the first audience heard. That first line would be a bit of a trumpet blast. Shakespeare definitely had their full attention with that line. I can imagine they immediately pricked up their ears, because the first audience would have known in an instant that Albany and Cornwall were the king's sons, because Albany and Cornwall were the king's sons in real life. King James was on the throne when this play was performed, and King James' elder son, Henry, was the Duke of Cornwall at that time, and his younger son, Charles, the Duke of Albany. I guess for today it would be something like, I thought the king favoured Prince William over Prince Harry. Pretty brave of Shakespeare, right? This is quite a typical opening scene, a few minor characters having a chat and giving us some clues before the title character comes in. Lear enters with a big group, including his 3 daughters and 2 sons-in-law and attendants. Kent, Gloucester, and Edmund was still on stage at this point. This gives us a clue about how big Shakespeare's company is. That's 9 people plus attendants. The number of attendants is unspecified, but I guess at least 2, so there are more than 10 people on stage in one go. I haven't read much about Shakespeare's company. Did everybody belong to the King's Men, or did Shakespeare hire extra actors, depending on the play? I'm not sure. After Gloucester introduces Edmund to Kent, we hear the first speech of Lear. Meantime, we shall express our darker purpose. What does he mean by darker purpose? Give me the map there. Know that we have divided in 3 our kingdom, and 'tis our fast intent to shake all cares and business from our age, conferring them on younger strength, while we, unburdened, crawl toward death. He wants to pass on his responsibility to his children, retire and enjoy life before he dies of old age. Our son of Cornwall, and you are no less loving son of Albany. Here we go. We have this hour a constant will to publish our daughter's several dowers, that future strife may be prevented now. Let's divide the kingdom between my children now, so you don't fight among yourselves in future. Dower usually goes with a new bride, as we'll see how it's denied in the case of Cordelia. But I guess here it refers to the wealth that comes with the daughters to Cornwall and Albany, because they are already married. I also wonder if this is a shadow from the various source material, in all of which the 3 daughters are unmarried at the beginning of the story. Therefore, the division of the kingdom will, in a true sense be their dower. The princes, France and Burgundy, great rivals in our youngest daughter's love, long in our court have made their amorous sojourn, and here are to be answered. He will make a decision about which prince will marry Cordelia today too. Tell me, my daughters, since now we will divest us both of rule, interest of territory, cares of state. Divest means to strip, to make naked. Lear voluntarily strips himself of his reign, his land and authority, which is something abstract that cannot be seen. Although we might miss it just reading the text, there's definitely a gradual stripping of his royal garments. For the rest of the play, keep an eye on all the references to putting on and taking off of clothes. I will talk a lot more about this in the part 2 video. So I'll read it again. Since now we will divest us both of rule, interest of territory, cares of state, which of you shall we say doth love us most? That we our largest bounty may extend, where nature doth with merit challenge. Goneril, our eldest born, speak first. This gives me the fairy tale quality again. What a surreal question to ask. Can you imagine that happening at Christmas? And notice Lear's question is not exactly which of you love me most. Shakespeare sneaks in 3 extra words. Which of you shall we say doth love us most? It's not objectively who is the most obedient and kind child, who cooks me every meal, takes me to the hospital, but who makes me feel she's the most loving. And Lear clearly cannot judge. If he could, he wouldn't be asking this nutty question. Everyone can see this is getting embarrassing. For the loyal ones, this does not bode well. For the opportunists, this is our chance. Let's do whatever that pleases the old man, since our inheritance depends on it. If he wants to be flattered, let's flatter him. So, Goneril answers in a lot of words that words fail me to say how much I love you. I watched the 2018 National Theatre production. Ian McKellen, as Lear at this point, brandished a large pair of scissors and cut a straight line off the top third of the map of Britain and Ireland. Of all these bounds, even from this line to this, which is Scotland of course, but mostly when you see the map it's just the empty sea, with shadowy forests and with champaigns reached, with plenteous rivers and wide-skirted meads, we make thee lady. Champagne means open country. It's kind of an accurate description of Scotland. After Regan's answer, Ian McKellen does the same thing, and this time slices off Ireland and shoves it to her. Both Goneril and Regan do not look very satisfied with what they get, but Lear doesn't give them any chance to complain. It's brilliant acting, unspoken, but it's obvious that Lear loves his youngest most. He keeps all of England from her grabbing sisters for her. But when it's her turn, Cordelia won't speak. She shockingly says, "Nothing, my lord." Not only that, she also exposes her sister's lies. If they love you, as they say, they would never have married, which is plain sense when it's pointed out like that, but it doesn't make Lear look good to be so pleased with blatant falsehood. I think Lear's mad with rage for at least 3 reasons. Cordelia bluntly refuses to obey the king's order. Lear realizes he's been foolish, but is too proud to admit it. Cordelia hurts the old father's heart. Her responses are hurled at him so unexpectedly, so humiliatingly in front of the whole court. He's almost at the point of lifting the map to hand over England with pleasure. He just wants her to say something nice, but in reality, his folly is exposed point blank and his good wish is trampled on the ground. as you can probably tell, I feel sorry for Lear. Cordelia, why don't you just humor your aged dad? But ask me another day, I'd say, well done, Cordelia, for standing up to an unreasonable tyrant. But ask me on any day, I'll give you the same opinion on what happened next. Lear definitely overreacts. He disowns Cordelia, gives her share of the kingdom to the other two daughters, and banishes the loyal servant Kent. Let's leave Lear, the aged parent, and his wretched daughters for a bit, and go to another aged parent, Gloucester, and his sons. Edmund, the younger bastard son of Gloucester, reminds me of Iago and Richard III. All three of them are dissatisfied with their status quo. Iago is bitter about Othello's decision to choose someone else to be his lieutenant. And by the faith of man, I know my price. I am worth no worse a place. Edmund says, wherefore should I stand in the plague of custom, and permit the curiosity of nations to deprive me? For that I am some 12 or 14 moonshines lag of a brother. Why bastard, wherefore base? When my dimensions are as well compact, my mind as generous, and my shape as true as honest madam's issue, why brand they us with base, with baseness? Bastardy, base. Can you tell he's so sick of being called bastard and base? Unlike Richard III, he's good looking, he's intelligent, he looks like his father just like his older brother does. Why should I be treated worse just because I was born later than my brother, or born of a woman who's not my father's wife? Is it my fault? It's a fair question. Edgar says later on, men must endure their going hence, even at their coming hither. One's birth, as well as death, is not to be planned out or controlled by oneself. Edmund is also like Richard III and Iago in that he is a great dissembler, to hide under false appearance and to pretend that not to be which really is. That's Dr. Johnson's definition of dissemble. Iago simply says, I am not what I am. If you've been reading Twelfth Night, which is Kelly's choice for this year, you might have noticed Viola says exactly that too. Edmund is in disguise to alienate Edgar, and their father, like Richard III, alienates his brothers Clarence and the king. Plots have I laid, inductions dangerous. Edmund laid plots too, by drunken prophecies, libels and dreams. Remember, Gloucester also believes in stars and dreams, to set my brother Clarence and the king in deadly hate, the one against the other. And if King Edward be as true and just, so is Edgar, as I am subtle, false, and treacherous. This day should Clarence closely be mewed up. In a very similar vein, Edmund says, a credulous father and a brother noble, whose nature is so far from doing harm that he suspects none, on whose foolish honesty my practice is right easy. I see the business, as in I got a plan. Let me, if not by birth, have lands by wit, always mismeet that I can fashion fit. Edgar is the last main character to arrive on stage. We hear about him from Gloucester in the opening scene, we hear about him from Edmund, now he's finally here. As a result of Edmund's clever lies to both his father and his brother, Gloucester is turned against Edgar, and poor Edgar has to run for his life. So within two sins, two happy families are scattered in grief and sorrow. Or maybe two seemingly happy families, false pretense has been shattered, and we see the great cracks that have always been there. One thing to pay attention to, do you notice when is the next time the whole family of King Leir appear together on stage? We pick up from the terrible scene where Lear's family gathering went terribly wrong. Cordelia is married off to France hastily. Lear is now staying with Goneril for the first month. When Lear gave up his throne and crown, there was one condition. Ourself by monthly course with reservation of 100 nights, by you to be sustained, shall our abode make with you by due turn. Lear wants to keep 100 knights with him when he moves between his daughters. But his knights, as well as himself, are proven too much for Goneril's nerves. By day and night he wrongs me. Every hour he flashes into one gross crime or other that sets us all at odds. I'll not endure it. His knights grow riotous, and himself upbraids us on every trifle. Imagine someone presumes on your patience and kindness, takes everything for granted, has wild parties in your house day and night, and finds faults with you if things are not to his taste. And you have to bite your tongue because he's your dad. I don't know what I'd do in her situation, but I can understand why Goneril is not pleased, and I don't think she's been unreasonable. At the beginning of Act 1, Scene 3 and 4, Goneril and Regan behave completely reasonably, I'd say. They flattered Lear, they got their inheritance, and they were worried and wary about Lear's temper. They are distant and not affectionate. They are proud like their dad, all three of them, Cordelia included. Goneril starts to show unkindness and impatience towards her father, but I wouldn't say she's evil at this point. She tries to reason with him. Please stop the riotous behavior and show some respect, otherwise I'll have to do something. Lear still behaves as in Scene 1, arrogant, unreasonable, provoking, overbearing, a tyrant. Before he gave his crown away, he could afford to be a tyrant and people had to deal with it. But now things are a bit different. Goneril sees it very clearly. Idle old man that still would manage those authorities that he hath given away. The fool clearly sees it too. Thou hast little wit in thy bold crown when thou givest thy golden one away. But Lear is still blind to the fact. Lear can still order people about and behave and look like a king with authority. Go you and tell my daughter I would speak with her. Go you, call hither my fool. The 100 knights give the illusion of authority, though Oswald's, Goneril's servant, starts to prick that bubble immediately after the two attendants go out. Oi, you, sir, you come here hither. Sir, who am I, sir? My lady's father. Which is absolutely true. We are tolerating you because you are my lady's father, not because you are the king. Lear holds on to the 100 knights so dearly because it's part of his identity. When the number is halved, his self-image is halved. It shocks him so much that he cries as he curses. Having the 100 knights around him and having them obey him like old days makes him feel like he still wields power and authority, though everyone except him can see that it's just a shadow of real authority. In reality, he can't even order his daughter's servants about. Oswald proves it. In the same scene, Lear starts to see his folly for giving his crown away. Woe that too late repents. Oh, Lear, 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 beat at this gate that let thy folly in and thy dear judgment out. A few lines later he says, I have another daughter, who I'm sure is kind and comfortable. When she shall hear this of thee, with her nails she'll flay thy wolfish visage. Thou shalt find that I'll resume the shape which thou dost think I have cast off forever. His knights halved from 100 to 50 is mirrored in his daughters. When Goneril angers him, he says, I have another daughter. His number of daughters is halved in a clap too. And when he is shut out, he has no knight or daughter left. However, at this point, he is still dreaming. When he is received by another daughter, things will be restored to their former glory. But we know how Goneril and Regan plotted together, and there is a little hope for that. Lear has doubt too, otherwise he wouldn't have said, I have another daughter whom I am sure is kind and comfortable. When I say, I'm sure it's fine, I'm sure it won't rain, you understand that I'm not sure, and there's a risk that it will rain. There's always a chance that it will rain in England. Lear has a fit of rage against Goneril, just like when Cordelia disobeyed him in Act 1, Scene 1. He curses Goneril, wishing her to never be able to have children, and if she does, the child will be a torment to her. In both productions I watched, Goneril sheds tears as she listens silently. I feel like this is the point when Goneril is pushed over the edge. Before this, her father was an annoyance that she had to deal with. Now she has gone to the dark side. She hates him. Kent witnesses all this. When we last saw him, he was banished from the kingdom for speaking up for Cordelia and criticizing the king. He now comes back to serve the king in disguise. I like Kent best. He's such a loyal servant and friend. If Lear had taken Kent's advice, Lear would still be the king, Cordelia still the daughter. Lear keeps his stubborn pride and gets ready to go to Regan's. We don't see any attendants that represent his 100 knights at all after the last scene. This is a quiet scene after all the shouting and cursing with just Lear and the fool. The fool chatters on to cheer him up while his mind slips between the jokes and the foreboding situation. He starts to contemplate his folly of misjudging the situation and disowning Cordelia. I did her wrong, he says, to take it again perforce, monster ingratitude. And finally, oh, let me not be mad, not mad, sweet heaven, keep me in temper, I would not be mad. Lear leaves Goneril's home. From this point on, he wanders on, under the sun, under the stars, and in the storm, until the end. This is one of the things that haunts me and makes the story bleak and uncomfortable. The dispossessed homelessness of the characters. Lear is shut out by his daughters, Edgar is shut out by his father, Gloucester ambles towards Dover, out and vulnerable to the elements. We are at the end of Act 1. We looked at the opening scene, we compared Edmund with similar villains from other Shakespeare's plays, and we saw Lear's illusion of his authority. We are about to find out how Lear is going to be received by Regan. The second plot line is going to surface. In the part 2 video, we'll see one of the most well-known weather conditions in all English literature and the extraordinary transformation that Lear goes through as a character through that storm in the theme of self-knowledge. We'll also look at the play under the theme of clothing. Why are there so many mentions of garments and putting on and taking off of clothes? Pay attention to those if you haven't read it yet. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I will see you then. That's all for today. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in my next one.